evening, Ashley.
Hi, Jay.
What's new?
So I was laid off on Thursday. Yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah. I guess working for a small company, sometimes things don't always play out, you know. Company has costs, and well, hey, one way to cut costs is by letting people go.
Well, tell us a little bit about what your position entailed, and then, how do you imagine the company's going to keep going without you there? Were you the only one doing what you were doing?
I was the only front-end developer there, and I was also the only UX person. So typically, on a web team, you would have, say, a front-end developer, like myself, who would work with visual designers. And someone like myself takes their designs and transforms those into web pages. And sometimes you may also have sort of another step, someone called an information architect, someone who kind of figures out the best way to put things within a page and how pages connect to each other, things like that. So it turns out that the company I worked for had no visual designers nor any information architects. Now this is kind of odd since typically both of those positions are just
necessary.
Yes, necessary. They're a matter of course. But they didn't. So it fell to me to kind of take on some of those tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of the one-girl UX department. So when it came to design decisions within the site, sometimes maybe we were adding a new page or a new feature here and there, they would kind of look to me for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I always kind of felt uncomfortable with that role just since there are people who design things for a living and are way, way better at it than I am.
So knowing what I do of the industry, do you suspect then that in the future they're going to keep doing what they were doing before you came on board? Which is to say, developing web pages and not caring
how they look.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's likely the case, yeah.
I've worked at a lot of different web design companies, and in that industry, it's not a terrible thing to jump from job to job, say every 2 years or 3 years or so. But anyway, I've only ever met one back-end developer who really seemed to get it intrinsically, the whole concept of user experience design.
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree.
But anyway, so yeah, that's the reason they gave you, that they couldn't afford you?
They didn't come out and say it, but that's kind of the understanding I got out of it.
Oh, okay. Well, what was your immediate reaction?
It was almost a relief.
Why is that?
In the sense that the whole separate but equal thing for the ladies' room, that was just, it was really aggravating.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just demeaning. I mean,
do you think that when you're searching for a new job, you'll find people who are more amenable to you using the ladies' room?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I think that at the company where I work, there's sort of a CYA kind of attitude, just not even specifically related to that, but just in general. And I think that as well, the people who were making the decisions in regard to the bathroom stuff at the company where I worked were, well, my old manager was probably almost 50, and the HR guy was at least 50. And even though this is, I haven't done surveys or anything, I've generally found that tolerance seems to be inversely proportional with age, just in general.
I'd say that's true on average, sure.
Yeah. So were I to work at another company, the chances are that the HR person at whatever the new company is will be probably the same age or probably younger than the HR person that I dealt with.
Well, personal tolerance is one thing, but company rules are separate from that, aren't they?
That is true, but then again, you can think of it sort of like the cop who gives you a warning instead of giving you a ticket, which is to say, there's usually some leniency or in terms of the way that you interpret the rules and the way that you view people's intentions as those apply to the rules, as it were.
Okay.
And so I think that at other companies, I think they'll do the right thing. I would like to think.
Yeah. So sometime in the near future, when you get an interview, you'll be presenting as a woman, naturally.
Right.
Do you expect anybody to ask at any point during the interview or hiring process, like, hey, something about you doesn't add up. What's going on there? Or do you imagine that you're going to be forthcoming with it? And if so, how early? Or do you think that it'll make it all the way through to the filling out paperwork HR stage when somebody gets a copy of your driver's license or whatever and says, oh, hey, look at that. Interesting. Never noticed.
I plan on lampshading this.
Are you talking about like pretending that wearing a lampshade is a disguise?
I think that's where it originated, but this is actually a term I picked up from the website TV Tropes. They say, lampshade hanging is the writer's trick of dealing with any element of the story that threatens the audience's willing suspension of disbelief by calling attention to it and then moving on.
Oh.
And says it exists regardless of logic. So what I plan on doing is when I apply for the job, which will be likely over email or what have you, and then most likely someone would call me or maybe email me. But either way, they would likely talk to me on the phone at some point prior to when I would actually come in for the interview. I will probably say something toward the end of the call, something like, although my voice may belie this, I'm also a transgender woman. Will this be a problem? And then they'll probably say, nope, that's just fine. And see you when you come in whenever. Just because I know that my voice is not yet good enough to be able to pass throughout the course of, say, a 1-hour interview.
Which voice?
Even if I'm applying my full effort, either my full effort would not be enough, or I'm certain that I would at least slip up once. And part of it as well is that when I talk on the phone with whomever about, maybe it's a phone screening, or maybe they're just trying to set up the interview, I would presume that once they get off the call, they would talk to their coworkers about, hey, I just talked with Ashley. And I would want them to say, and she looks like a promising candidate, we're going to have her for the interview in 2 days or something. Rather than inferring from my voice that I was a man.
Okay. Because
I would want them to use the right pronouns from the start rather than me having to reverse those trends later.
Right. Why do you want to ask at the end if it's going to be a problem?
That's really just a way to toss underhand to these people to allow them to say yes and affirm that they are tolerant people.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I don't know, maybe they might feel as if they should say something like, well, this would be fine with us. Do I tell her that it'll be fine with us or whatever?
Yeah.
Why, do you think that's unwise?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know either, because this will be the first time that I've interviewed since I've transitioned.
Have you done any Googling, though, about how transgender women apply for jobs? And whether it's difficult for any given reason?
Yeah. I'm glad that you keep an open mind as an interviewer, Jay.
Sure.
Just in the sense that you assume that by default it would not be difficult for transgender people to interview. And I mean, I would like to think the same, but I know that statistically speaking, the unemployment rate for transgender persons, I believe, is 14% nationally, which I think is double the national average. But I mean, there are a lot of bigots in corporations and such. But I would like to think that within the IT technology sphere that people are generally pretty tolerant. So I'm cautiously optimistic, I think.
Here's a potentially throwaway question. If you were to end up at a company that had a strict dress code that actually said, like, if women aren't wearing pants, they must wear pantyhose, how would you feel about that?
If there was a company that had those type of requirements, I'd be quite wary. Not only just because of the whole nuisance of the formal attire, but I found that dress codes can often be sort of a canary in the coal mine for other problems within a company.
Mm-hmm.
That if the company has those types of antiquated things, that they're likely antiquated in other regards as well.
Right.
So,
you've recently made some comments through Twitter using certain phrases that I don't think somebody who wasn't attracted to men would use. Like when we were talking about the guy who played Buzz in the Hudsucker Proxy, where you said, I don't know if it's the situational hotness, but he's not doing it for me there.
yeah.
So I'm curious if in the last 2 years or so you found that your attraction to men has been growing.
You say 2 years?
Yeah.
I've been on
generous.
HRT for 1 year, if that makes.
Okay.
I mean, so for what it's worth, just to kind of...
Sometime within the last 2 years.
Yeah, just to kind of preface some of this, before I had started taking HRT, I read up on it quite extensely. Since, well, you know how I am. I like to research things.
I wouldn't have invited you to be on the show if you weren't a researcher.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd just be babbling and not making very good points.
And so I like to learn about things before I get into them. And certainly in this case with HRT, given that it was my own body, I especially wanted to learn about what was involved. And so reading through various trans women kept sort of HRT diaries, as it were, as far as here's what happened at 2 months and at 3 months and so on. And so there were some cases that I'd read about where trans women who were lesbians found that they had some attraction to men at some point within the HRT process. In fact, when I came out to many of my friends in the area, one thing I would kind of include in that email is something along the lines of, just because it's a common question, I don't find myself attracted to men, although I've heard some cases of trans women become attracted to men at some point.
I don't remember that part.
Well, you should read more closely, Jay.
I guess.
It's in there, I
and
promise.
we were pretty clear about how, one's gender identity and the people you were attracted to were parallel lines that weren't meant to intersect at any point.
You could say they're orthogonal.
Would you say that's still true then?
So just to clarify, the two lines we were talking about would be gender identity and sexual orientation.
Okay.
And my gender identity is still the same as it always was.
Right.
So...
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
But your sexual orientation may be shifting.
Well, I'm still attracted to women. That part hasn't changed. But I have noticed that there are some men that are nice to look at.
One of the things that was quirky about you in years past was that you were always completely baffled when people would remark upon a man as being attractive. You'd be like, oh, is he cute? Is he hot? I have no idea. Like,
I know.
Who's prettier, David Boreanaz or Nicholas Brendan? You wouldn't. But now you have strong opinions about whether a man is attractive. Or is it really only sometimes?
Indeed, in years past, I was a very poor judge of male hotness. I would have no idea. I think there were some conventionally hot or commonly accepted as hot men that...
Brad Pitt, George Clooney.
Sure, that I was aware that they were attractive simply because society told me that they were over and over, and so I didn't need to ask people about those. But there were some other smaller actors, like, who played the Scarecrow?
Cillian Murphy.
Right, yeah. He was also in Inception, right?
Yes. And he's a pretty man.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I hear women say it all the time, but I don't really know what it means either. Like young David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, he was a very pretty man. The other guy from Inception, Leonardo DiCaprio, without facial hair, he's very pretty. But there are also guys that are attractive in a totally different way.
Okay.
I think that's when they use the word hot.
Okay, so for whatever reason, I never watched The West Wing while I was on television. So there's a character, Sam Seaborn, who's played by...
Rob Lowe.
Yes, that chap. I noticed that he would have his scene or whatever, and they would do the scene, and then they'd go to some other actor's scene.
Yeah.
And I found myself kind of looking forward to his scenes. Like,
okay.
oh, that scene, it's done already. But this was me trying to figure this out because this was all subconscious in my head kind of stuff. It wasn't that I thought, oh, he's cute. It was just that, oh, I wish I'd seen it gone on a little more. Okay, so assuming that this is not something that just came in one day, that is something that kind of gradually came along, as opposed to it always being there and me just noticing it gradually.
Okay.
And so often what I would do as I was watching The West Wing, it happens I happen to have a laptop in my kitchen, so maybe as I'm preparing dinner or baking cookies or something, I would have that on. And I would find that in some scenes I could sort of, let stuff simmer and whatever, I could sort of hear the dialogue and carry on with the show. But on his scenes, I would sort of glance at the monitor, the laptop screen, and it's like, oh, he is nice to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of I figured out, I was like, oh yeah, I guess he is kind of cute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Generally accepted as one of the country's most attractive actors since the early 1980s.
And as I would kind of tell my women friends about this, they'd be like, well, yeah.
It's Rob
As
Lowe.
if I should have known like all along.
Right.
Yeah, he's pretty cute.
Okay.
That may have been, I don't know if that's a crush or not, but yeah. Yeah, he was nice. He was nice to look at.
All right. But it's more than that? Not just that one guy?
Oh yeah, and that Gosling chap. What? As Jay throws his arms in the air.
Can't
Pshaw.
quit hearing about stupid Ryan Gosling. I understand he had a very appealing character in The Notebook. I haven't seen
I've
it.
not seen that either. So that's the weird thing is like with Gosling, I've not actually seen any of his films yet. I've only seen trailers with him in it. But it's nice. He has a good... His head is nice. I don't know.
I'm betting he's very symmetrical. So sometimes I'll be watching something and I'll have a very similar thought, like, oh, that's a pretty dude, But it doesn't cause a stirring in my loins, and I don't ever really daydream. I'm like, oh, I'd like to see him taking his shirt off and then do stuff with him. So how far does it go for you?
You might say it's like when you see, say, a well-taken photograph on Flickr, or maybe some of those photo essays that they have, like best photos of the year, whatever. And sometimes it's just like a nice photograph that you can really look into and gaze upon because it's really well composed and so on. And it's sort of like that for me, I guess.
Okay.
I don't daydream about.
You don't ever think, oh, I wonder if he's well hung.
No, that part doesn't really come into it. Sometimes I wonder what
I
it'd
would
be
say,
like.
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say sometimes I wonder what would it be like to maybe give him a kiss or something, but I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know.
And you're pretty sure that it's the HRT that has caused this change in your brain?
Well, so that's the thing is that of course I'm taking 2 medications as part of my HRT. I'm taking one
Testosterone blocker and estrogen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this is just me guessing at this point. But it could be either one of those. It could be that maybe this is the way that I have always felt, parentheses, but that the testosterone that used to be poisoning me was overriding those natural tendencies. Or maybe it is the estrogen that's having some effect.
Yeah. And your internal hormone levels are still changing, right? Like from month to month. Do you get measured for that sort of thing, or?
Yeah. I go. In fact, I have an appointment next week with my HRT doctor. Yeah, they take blood tests and they check up on my levels, make sure everything's where it should be. But so to answer your question though, so my levels they fairly plateaued, I guess you could say. I mean, my testosterone is almost 0, as it would be the case with cisgender women. And my estrogen levels are right up around where it would be for cisgender women.
Okay.
But having said that, it's still possible that over time, the cumulative effect of continuously having those hormones at that level may have some effect.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, just in the sense that, for example, with puberty, whether male or female, there's a certain hormone change, but that the physical changes take place over time.
Mm. Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for being so open about that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for what it's worth, I still find myself attracted to women, and
Yeah.
that's largely how I think of myself. So I was like trying to think of what the right term would be, whether I would be a bisexual lesbian or a lesbian bisexual, or
I think bisexual is just bisexual.
if
I guess it'd be like you're 15% attracted to men.
might be 70-30 or
Sure.
yeah, sure. So I need to find more hot guys to figure out which ones I'm attracted to.
To what?
To find out which ones are cute, because okay, so for persons who are attracted to women, there seems to be more of a consensus, I guess, of certain women are attractive, certain women are not attractive. Or
I don't know about that. People have been trying to tell me that Julia Roberts is pretty, and I've never understood it.
yeah, she's okay.
Well, she's not. She's really off-putting.
All right, do you dig though that there's more consensus of women who are attractive than men who are attractive?
There's the symmetry thing, which is true of both genders.
Right.
Traditionally, men enjoy women with large breasts
Sure.
and long legs
Hmm.
and tiny waists.
Right.
Aside from that, I mean, faces are very, very different, and hair is very, very different. Some people only like redheads. Some people only like
Yeah.
Asian chicks.
But okay, so what I'm trying to get at though is that can you concede that there's more consensus of which women are attractive than which men are attractive? Is that
I don't know that I can concede that. I don't know that I have enough data.
because there seems to be more of a discrepancy or disagreement thing? But okay, but anyway,
Well, what have you noticed that makes you think that? Just more women arguing about whether a dude is attractive?
yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, and I guess
Right.
also that, well, for instance, in terms of magazine covers or whatever, or female movie stars. Most very highly paid female movie stars are also attractive, I guess. But
Yeah, they'd almost have to be. But
yeah,
the same is true of men. Nobody puts Wayne Knight on the cover of a magazine.
yeah. But like George Clooney isn't as attractive to some women as others.
I think that you're talking about what I think of in my brain as the New Kids on the Block phenomenon.
Oh,
When there's a hot boy band,
uh-huh.
teen girls, maybe preteen girls as well, will, as a group, decide which girl gets to obsess about which guy in the boy band,
Oh, divvying them up.
and there can't be any crossover.
Hmm. Okay.
That might be related.
Yeah. Okay. But so what I'm trying to get at though is, see, I'm still figuring out my own sexuality or whatever, because I don't know if these are just like isolated incidents or if there's more of a pattern to it or whatever, or if or to put it another way, if I have a type for as far as my men goes.
It's the end of the year, so go get People's 25 Most Beautiful People issue or something,
Oh, now you're talking.
and just flip through it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. On a different topic,
Yeah.
what have you considered doing about your eyebrows?
So I'm vain enough that even before I came out to myself, my hairstylist would wax my eyebrows.
Really?
Yeah. It makes a big difference. I tell all my guy friends, but they're just like, "Wah, wah, wah, wah."
I use my beard trimmer.
You're trimming your eyebrows in the same manner that someone would mow their lawn.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not changing the shape of your eyebrows.
No. It's got the guard on it.
Right, yes. So, yeah, back before I'd come out to myself, my hairstylist would wax my eyebrows just to maintain a better shape. And after I came out to her, she adapted her technique, that of how she would wax eyebrows for her female clients.
Oh.
So, yeah.
They look a little bit thick from where I'm standing. Is that something where threading would get involved?
I usually have a hair appointment every 5 to 6 weeks. And it's been about 5 to 6 weeks because I have one in 3 days or whatever.
Okay.
So I don't know whether I go so far as to say my eyebrows are unruly, but they might be at the point where they're not as sculpted as they might normally be.
Okay.
Take a look, for example, at the transition day photographs that I posted, because those have, I think, a pretty good view of my eyebrows. Though I do also have a set of tweezers, of course. And if you're looking for a good brand, I've heard these are quite good. These are Tweezer Man.
You sure?
Which I've always found ironic because of the clientele.
We've got some time left if you'd like to teach me something ladylike.
Sure, yeah.
Sweet.
So, okay, I got a couple jobbies here. I do.
I like jobbies.
I know. Okay. So do you recognize this guy?
Do both ends open up?
Yes.
It's mascara?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
It's beauty tubes.
Yeah.
All right.
L'Oreal double extend with beauty tubes. Yeah. So with these jobbies, so this is actually sort of a tip I learned from one of the makeup artists from whom I was getting some lessons. And what you can do with your mascara is essentially these little jobs they're sort of like pipe cleaners. I don't know quite what the material is. But what you can do though is you can, as you're taking the cap off, you can bend it so that you get sort of this kind of shape, if you can see that.
Sure.
So yeah, roughly at a right angle, you can bend it, and it'll bend back, so you're fine with that.
Okay.
But at any rate, this is often easier as a means of getting one's eyelashes as sort of beep, 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 as opposed to when it's straight. If I can just straighten this out, then you end up with like this kind of thing, which is harder to do. So this is a small trick actually, but if you take the cap off halfway and then pull the cap downward, you can get sort of a nice, right angle out of it. Yeah.
How many mascara brushes would you say that's true of?
That you can bend like that?
Yeah. Most?
Probably most.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neat.
I think that's my understanding, yeah.
What's the second jobby?
Yeah. So, you remember these guys?
I remember some non Q-tip named cotton swabs, sure.
That's right, yes. So just to recap, the brand I like best is Johnson's.
Sure.
And better than Q-tip because Q-tip are rubbish. And the reason being that the Johnson's ones don't have as much flyaway cotton bits at the ends. They're more dense. So, another trick I learned actually, this is what I learned from my cousin Brianna over Thanksgiving. So, hi Brianna, hi! Yeah. So, what you can do with these is, if you're, say, applying eyeliner with a eyeliner pencil, you would typically then use a brush to smudge that slightly so it's not such a hard line. But if you don't have a brush handy, you can use a Q-tip and just smudge it with that.
All right.
Yeah. So you can get more precision out of a brush, but sometimes maybe you don't have the budget for all the brushes that you want, or maybe you're traveling and you don't have room for all your brushes. Well, you can use a cotton swab for that. Yeah.
That brings up an interesting question. Have you started doing your makeup in the car?
Oh God, no.
Have you thought about it? Have you thought, oh, if only I'd woken up earlier. Wait a minute, I could do this in the car. No, that'd be dangerous.
Well, I have done my lipstick in the car. But that's usually because, those aren't too difficult.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, so say you're doing your bronzer, for example. Well, you're not, but you know what I mean. And so there's certain patterns you want to go through, but it's hard to apply that with precision when just looking at the little rear view jobby or the flip down visor mirror.
Right.
Especially in the sense that you have to sort of have a sustained period of concentration to do that. That a red light, for example, would probably not be sufficient for that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Have you ever, just for fun, without planning on going anywhere, ever done your makeup in a totally trashy way to see how slutty you could look? And I know that those two words have negative connotations, but in my mind, they don't. So.
Right, sure, no, I understand what you're trying to say. So of the makeup techniques that I'm familiar with, they're largely ones that I've picked up from the makeup artists and so on, from whom I've had lessons. And so I guess there's sort of two factors that impede me in some ways toward getting that slutty look. One of which is that most of the techniques I've learned are not really designed to have that outcome. And I suppose also that the makeup products that I have are largely in support of the techniques of which I am familiar. And so I don't...
And I'm not sure how one would go about getting that, hey, I'm totally promiscuous, chat me up look. But, for example, I don't think I've ever seen you wearing bright red lipstick.
Right, that's true, yeah. Because that does not really suit me very well.
How do you know?
Because I've tried it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Well, I tried it at the makeup artist. They've got like the whole shitload of lipsticks, so it's like I just tried all kinds of them. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the thing with red lipstick though is that it has very little margin for error because it is such a high contrast color compared to your skin tone, unless I guess you're really sunburnt or something.
I guess so. Yeah.
So
or you're snooky.
Yeah, but okay, but for example, like more of a beige or a pinkish tone, if you quote-unquote color outside the lines slightly, it's not as obvious. But with red, yeah, that's going to be really obvious. Plus, it sort of has to match with the rest of your look. But I do...
What about that smoky eye look that they talk about in commercials?
I'm sort of aware of some of that in terms of having not only the top eyeshadow, but also some sort of bottom eyeshadow, and maybe some eyeliner on your waterline. And that's something I've played around with a little bit, yeah. But that's not something I'd wear to work or what have you.
No?
Although that specific problem is not one that I have at the moment.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Well,
but the other thing is...
I hope you find something soon. Yes. Certainly don't want to see you becoming homeless and destitute.
Well, thank you, Jay. And I do have sort of a rainy day fund, as it were.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Ashley, and for teaching me stuff.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jay.
Good.
Yay!
We will talk again soon.
Okay. Bye!